The debate about migration in Britain rarely goes the way the data actually points.
Traitors made a lot of you. This is our country. You should be here standing with us.
Massive protests, I'm sure you've been seeing them on the internet, are erupting all over London as UK residents are pushing for tougher immigration policies and stricter border patrol.
Politicians talking headlines, newspapers run front pages, and somewhere in the noise, the actual economic picture, what migration really costs, what it really contributes, and who really wins and loses, gets completely buried. So let's talk about what the numbers actually say. The UK has just been through the biggest surge in migration in its recorded history, net migration.
Net migration needs to come down radically.
636,000 people.
Ukraine, Afghanistan, Hong Kong. It's a big picture.
That's the number of people arriving minus the number leaving. It peaked at 906,000 in 2023. To put that into context, in 2010, the figure was typically between 250,000 and 350,000 a year. We more than doubled that in a single year. By 2024, it had fallen sharply to 431,000, still well above the historical norm, and the composition had shifted dramatically. After Brexit, EU migration collapsed. More EU citizens had actually left the UK than arrived since January 2021, meaning the European population living here is now lower than before Brexit. The surge came instead from non-EU countries. 3.6 million non-EU nationals arrived between 2021 and 2024 alone. That's the starting point. Now let's get into what all of these people actually mean for the British economy. Between January 2021 and December 2024, the number of employee jobs in the UK grew by 2.8 million. That's roughly 9%. And here's the number that surprises most people. 2/3 of that job growth was accounted for by non-EU workers. They held 4 million jobs by December 2024, almost double the 2.1 million they held just 4 years earlier. These aren't just low-wage cleaning and hospitality roles, those matter too. The NHS and social care system has become structurally dependent on overseas workers. At the peak of recruitment, 26,000 international care workers were arriving every quarter. In adult social care alone, overseas recruitment helped bring vacancy rates down from a crisis point of 165,000 unfilled posts, and 85,000 British nationals left the sector between 2021 and 2025, driven out by low wages and poor conditions. Without migration, those vacancies don't get filled by domestic workers. They simply don't get filled. The same dynamic plays out in construction, logistics, hospitality, and the tech sector. Britain has a persistent skills shortage in multiple industries simultaneously, and for a decade, migration has been the pressure valve. Now, let's talk about money, specifically what migrants actually contribute to British public finances. The Office for Budget Responsibility, the government's own independent forecaster, has modeled this carefully. A migrant who arrives at age 25 and earns the UK average salary will contribute to £341,000 to public finances over their working life. That's more than an equivalent UK-born worker on the same salary. This is because the UK didn't pay for their childhood education, healthcare, or upbringing. That cost was borne by another country. Research by UK and a Changing Europe found out that the average migrant who arrived between 2019 and 2023 actually earns slightly more than the average British-born worker, £24,881 a year versus £23,990 a year. So contrary to the narrative that migrants come here to use public services, the data actually shows that they come here to work. They earn above average and they pay more in than they take out. The OBR has also modeled what happens to borrowing under different migration scenarios. In a higher migration scenario compared to a lower one, borrowing by 2028 to 2029 would be £19.9 billion lower. Lower migration means less tax revenue, higher deficits, and a bigger national debt. So economically, more migration makes the books look better. Less migration makes them worse. But here's where it gets complicated, because the economic gains from migration are not evenly distributed, not even close. The Migration Advisory Committee found that migration has at most a small impact on the overall employment and wages of UK-born workers. But that average conceals a very uneven picture. The highest paid workers tend to gain from migration. They benefit from cheaper services, more dynamic businesses, and a larger economy. The lowest paid workers tend to lose out. When you flood a sector with labour, even if it keeps that sector running, you suppress the wage growth that would otherwise have forced employees to pay more and improve conditions. Social care is the clear example. The sector has been chronically underpaid for decades. Wages are low, conditions are poor. 21% of care workers are on 0 hours contracts. British workers left in their tens of thousands, not because care workers beneath them, but because the pay didn't make it viable. Overseas recruitment allowed employers to avoid fixing that. Migration became a substitute for investment in the domestic workers. This is not a small point. It means that the economic pain of an underfunded sector gets absorbed by overseas workers on low wages, while the pressure to actually fix the underlying problem, wages, conditions, training, is permanently relieved. And then there's housing. This one is real and it matters.
A generation of young people may never be able to own their own homes because of a grave housing crisis.
The average 2-year fixed-rate mortgage has risen from 4.83% at the start of March to 5.66% now.
Unbelievably expensive.
The UK already had a severe housing shortage before the migration surge. The country needs around 300,000 new homes a year to keep pace with demand. And in 2024, only 221,000 were completed. Into the already tight market, net migration added over 900,000 people in a single year at the 2023 peak. A 2025 analysis found that high net migration combined with an inelastic housing supply is directly driving up private rents.
Everyone's at least 2 bad decisions away
we
from
always
being
say
on the
that.
streets.
This is not the only cause of the housing crisis. Planning restrictions, the collapse of social housing, and decades of underbuilding all play major roles. But it is a genuine contributing factor, and the people most exposed to rising rents are low-income households. So, we have a situation where migration boosts GDP, boosts tax revenues, keeps public services staffed, but the costs in housing and wage pressure lands disproportionately on people who are already struggling. That's not a case against migration, it's a case against failing to build houses and failing to invest in people in the domestic workforce. In the short run, migrants are great for public finances. They're working age, they pay taxes, they don't claim much in benefits, they're net contributors. But the OBR noticed something important. If those migrants stay in the UK long term, which recent research shows is more likely for lower paid workers than high earners, they will eventually retire. They'll draw pensions, they'll use the NHS in old age, they'll add to the age-related spending pressures that are already threatening to overwhelm the public finances. In other words, migration doesn't solve the aging population problem, it delays it. You're borrowing young workers from the future, and eventually they become old workers in the future too. The OBR put it plainly. Higher migration could be seen as delaying some of the fiscal challenges of an aging population rather than a way of resolving them permanently. That's not an argument for restricting migration, it's an argument for planning honestly around what comes next. Migration has been enormously economically valuable to Britain. That is not in serious dispute among economists. The NHS would be in collapse without it. Large parts of the economy, hospitality, logistics, construction, social care, technology, all depend on it. But the way Britain has managed migration and managed the economic gains from it has been a failure of distribution. The benefits have been captured by businesses and the state. The costs have been pushed onto communities, renters, and low-paid workers. There has been no honest conversation about wage structures in sectors that have used overseas labour as a way to avoid fixing broken pay models. The question was honestly never really about migration as good or bad for the economy. The honest answer is, it depends. It depends who you are, where you live, and whether you own your own home. For the Treasury, migration is a lifeline. For a nurse in the NHS, a migrant colleague is a colleague. And for someone trying to rent a flat in Birmingham or London or Manchester, migration is one more pressure in a market that was already broken. So, the debate Britain keeps having is the wrong debate. The argument, honestly, isn't about the number on the door. It's about whether the people who gain from migration are ever made to share those gains with the people who bear the costs. So far, the answer has been no.